I beat the simulation in 41 seconds that morning. Third fastest clean time in our year cohort, and the first recorded by a cephalopod morph cadet at the Vethan Orbital Combat Academy. The observation gallery broke into low, clicking approval. Tonal shifts I could read without looking. Instructor Dothran Moss himself flagged the evaluation and told me, in front of the full afternoon cohort, that my counter-rotation timing had exceeded the module's designed response ceiling. I remember being proud of that. I remember thinking it meant something. That was 4 hours before the human arrived. The Deathworlder response module was Moss's life. 6 years in construction, over 4,000 hours of recovered human combat footage, 14 engagements across 6 documented contact zones, plus garrison surveillance from a Class 13 Deathworld outpost the Vethon assembly had monitored from range for a decade. Moss had mapped every recorded strike pattern, every weight transfer, every transition window humans used under combat load. He had modeled their bilateral kinematics, their reflexive micro-corrections, the way they committed mass through a pivot without losing their center. The simulation moved the way real humans moved, low, fluid, faster than any species in our evolutionary bracket could naturally produce. It adapted within its parameter set. It hit hard enough to crack carapace if you dropped your guard. It was, by every metric the Academy applied, the most accurate human combat analog in the sector. Most cadets never beat it. Those who did, my squad leader Voreth among them, 38 seconds, cohort record, had trained against it for 2 full years, and learned its rhythms the way you learn current charts. Through repetition, through patience, through the slow, reliable accumulation of what it always did next. We believed we understood what a Deathworlder could do in close quarters. We had the data, we had the patterns. We had Moss standing at the control column every session, adjusting difficulty parameters, telling us we were the best prepared generation the Academy had ever graduated. The Joint Training Liaison arrived mid-cycle on a standard shuttle. 1 officer, Tess Renner, Grade 4 Technical Observer, attached to the bilateral exchange rotation under the Compact's interoperability clause. She came aboard with a kit bag and a sealed ration packet, and no particular expression on her face. She was smaller than the simulation. I noticed that immediately. The module's combat model was built to upper-range human female specifications, broad-shouldered, heavy-limbed, a frame engineered to communicate mass. Renner had none of that. She was compact, narrow across the shoulders. She moved through the docking corridor without urgency or waste, fitting the space the way fluid fills a channel, and she acknowledged Moss's formal welcome with one nod, and asked where she could store her gear. During the afternoon training block, she sat in the observation gallery with her legs drawn up on the bench and ate dried stone fruit from the sealed packet, 1 piece at a time. She watched us spar the module. She watched Voreth pin it clean in under 40 seconds. She watched a second-year insectoid cadet get dropped hard on a missed counter-entry and limp back to the staging bay. She watched all of it with the same face, which was no face at all. Neutral, settled, the expression of someone watching weather through a window. She didn't take notes. She didn't shift her posture. She sealed the half-finished packet and set it beside her on the bench, like someone settling in at a transit platform with no particular schedule to keep. Moss approached her when the block ended. I heard him because I was racking my sparring gear 2 bays from the gallery stairs. He kept his pitch careful, respectful, professional, but pride ran underneath every register. 6 years of his life stood in the arena behind him. He invited her to evaluate the module. Professional courtesy, a chance to confirm accuracy from the source. She said yes, 1 syllable, flat. She stepped into the arena and stood at the center mark. Moss keyed the module to standard engagement parameters. The holographic combat model materialized across from her, tall, heavy-built, already shifting into the opening stance every cadet in the program had memorized. Renner stood where she was, hands at her sides, weight even, no guard, no stance. The simulation moved first. It always did. That was part of its design. A fast lateral close, hips leading, hands trailing, weight committed through the entry line the way the recovered footage showed humans commit weight. Total, irreversible, built for a species that evolved on a world where hesitation killed you. The same opening I'd studied for 2 years. The same opening Voreth had beaten 100 times. Renner watched it come. She leaned back. 4 centimeters, maybe 5. The simulation's overhand strike passed her face close enough to shift her hair. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She watched the arm travel past the way you'd watch a door swing shut. Then she reached past the combat model, set her palm flat on the control column, and powered the module down. The arena went quiet. "This isn't what we do," she said. Moss's chromatophores shifted, loss of composure spreading in pale blotches across his mantle. He asked her to elaborate. She said it again. Same register, same flat delivery, as though she were reading a calibration error off a maintenance panel. "You mapped what we did, not what we'd do." Moss objected. He cited the development timeline. The 4,000 hours, 14 verified engagements, every documented human combat behavior reproduced at full fidelity. The module was peer-reviewed, published, adopted across 3 training programs in the sector. Renner listened without interrupting. When he was finished, she asked one question. "Your cadets who beat it, how long did it take them to learn its patterns?" 2 years, Moss said. "Some longer." She nodded. "Once. That's 2 years studying something that holds still." A pause. "We don't hold still." She asked if any cadet wanted to spar directly. Open floor. Standard contact rules. No protective mesh. Voreth stepped forward before anyone else moved. "My squad leader. Cohort record holder. 2 full years of pattern work behind every reflex he owned. He was taller than Renner by half a body length, heavier by a factor I didn't bother calculating, and he moved with the particular confidence of someone who had studied the threat and believed he'd mastered it. He took the contact line opposite her and settled into his stance. The same wide base counter-rotation posture that had beaten the simulation more times than any cadet in the program's history. Renner hadn't moved. She was standing where she'd been standing, hands at her sides. No guard, no weight shift. She looked at Voreth the way she'd looked at the simulation, the way she looked at everything, like she was reading a room that didn't know it was being read. Moss signaled the start. Voreth moved first. Fast angular entry, low, exploiting the documented recovery gap on the simulation's left flank. Technically flawless. 2 years of rehearsed muscle memory, executing exactly as trained. Renner stepped forward. 1 step, directly into his entry line. The simulation had never done that. Not once in 4,000 hours of recorded footage. Voreth's counter-rotation was already committed, his left arm extended, his weight shifting through the pivot, every joint locked into a sequence that assumed the target would do what targets had always done. She redirected his arm across his own center of mass, forearm to forearm. Not a strike, not a block. A line correction, the kind of adjustment you'd make tightening a cable under load. His balance broke. She guided the fall with one hand on his dorsal carapace, controlled, calibrated, and stepped past him as he hit the arena floor. 6 seconds, perhaps fewer. I wasn't counting. Afterward, it didn't matter. Voreth wasn't injured. She had measured it. The contact was precise enough that his carapace hadn't stressed, his joints hadn't torqued beyond tolerance. He lay on his back in perfect health, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what had happened to him. Nothing she had done existed anywhere in the simulation's 4,000 hours. She looked at the gallery, at 24 cadets who had spent 2 years mastering Dothran Moss's masterwork, and believed they understood what a human was. "Who's next?" she said. Same voice, same flat register. Not a challenge, not satisfaction. She asked it the way you'd ask someone to hand you a tool. Nobody answered. The arena held its silence for a long time. Renner walked back to the gallery bench, picked up her sealed packet, opened it, and ate another piece of stone fruit. She sat with her legs folded under her and looked out the observation window at the station's rotation against the slow drift of stars. Moss stood beside the control column he'd spent 6 years building. His chromatophores had gone flat neutral gray, every signal response competing at once, none of them winning. He looked at his own hands, then he looked at nothing. I racked my gear. I walked back to quarters. I sat on the edge of my bunk and thought about what I had watched. 4,000 hours, every strike, every transition, every recovery window, mapped and modeled and reproduced at full fidelity. Moss had built a perfect photograph of a human, accurate in every detail, faithful in every dimension, missing only one thing. A photograph doesn't change when it sees you coming. I lay on my bunk and stared at the overhead, and understood, finally, what a Class 13 Deathworld produces. Not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most aggressive. The one that's different every time you look.